In the last lecture, I walked you through the folder structure which was created by Create React App, and we edited our app.js file. Let's now dive deeper into what we see here. Here we see a React component. As I explained, React is all about creating components, basically custom HTML elements, which you can then use to construct your application. If you see, this app component is actually getting used in the index.js file where you render it at the top element. We could also render some normal HTML here too. For example, let's replace this app component with this content. Just to highlight, this is now not a React component. If I save this, I will see this hello world getting appeared or h1 tag. But of course, we have no real React application. We are only rendering a normal HTML element, but we are not rendering our own React component. Typically, you render one root component, the app component, but you can name it whatever you want. Here, let's undo this code. This is the one root component. In our case, it is the app component, and in there you would nest all the other components your application might need. And of course, these components can then be nested into each other. But all the way to the top, you only have one root component. So just let's stick to the general or typical usage of React. We have this app component which is defined in app.js file. Here we see one way or one of the two ways of defining a component. We create a JavaScript class with class keyword, and then we use the extends keyword to inherit it from the component object or class in precise, which is imported from the React library. Here, actually, we are importing two things here: React, which is used for or responsible for rendering anything to the DOM, and we also need to import that in a file where we define a component. I will also show you different ways of creating components also. So let's first of all talk about this class method. This class method has one render method. It needs to have that because because React will call this method to render something to the screen. There is one important job every React component has to do. It has to render or return some HTML code which can be rendered to the DOM, to the screen, or you can also do or perform some calculations, listen to the events, or whatever you need in your application. But you always need to render some HTML to the DOM. We then export this app class to the default export of this file. This is an ES6 feature, or it simply means if you import this whole file, you will simply import this class because it's the default export. We do this in the index.js file also, where we are importing the app component from app file. Again, we are omitting the .js extension because it's needed by because it's actually added by our build workflow automatically for all the JavaScript files. This app name here, by the way, is chosen arbitrarily, but typically you can name it as per your own choice. One side note to mention here is that We might also see these component with .jsx extension or sometimes with .js extension. The reason for this is this code which is being rendered by or written by the app component. I refer to it as HTML, which is returned, but in the end this is not HTML. It looks like it, but it is JSX, so it is a JavaScript looking a bit different, and this can be confusing at first time when you are learning React. Important to know is this, that it is just a syntax which was basically invented by the React team, and we can write it in our JavaScript files because of the build workflow we are using here. It will basically automatically transpile it to the valid JavaScript in the end. It's not connected to the file extension you are using. It works in either in .js extensions or .jsx extensions, or but nowadays we are using .js file extension, but you can also use .jsx extension of your own choice. In the next lecture we are going to cover this JSX code in more detail, so stay tuned and thank you for watching.